what's a normal amount of sex? Like, how much sex should you be having? What's normal? And can you have too much sex? Is there a bad side to sex, you know? We're going to talk about this. We're also going to talk about what other people do. Guys, I'm Dr. Jen. It is good to see you. Let's jump right in, okay? So if you put in, like, you Google, like, how much sex should I have? What's the normal amount of sex, etc., you'll probably come up with a number of sources that suggest that for couples, having sex about once a week tends to be a common thread, a common theme, whether it's dependent on some surveys, some studies, etc. And there's even some studies that suggest that once a week is kind of the sweet spot for keeping people happy in relationships, etc. What I would say is I can go along with that. I do think that there's some variability and perhaps some we should be a little flexible with that because it depends on how you define sex, who is being asked, etc. Right? Okay, but many sources say maybe once a week is an average for couples. Now, let's talk about trends, though, what I think is interesting. Oh, and by the way, let me just also say, just because that's what many people say is the average doesn't mean that that's your average, which, by the way, is something we're going to talk about a little bit more as we get into how much sex is too much. Can you have too much sex? Okay. But the next thing I want to talk about is some trends that we've found in research. By the way, I'm going to put these links to these studies in the description of this video on YouTube. If you're watching on Facebook, just DM me. I'll send you the studies. A couple of things I think is really, really interesting by some researchers who've been looking at sex. Number one, women are less likely than men to have intimate relationships or be sexually active. Now, I actually can believe that. I can believe that, number one, because I'm a woman. I can also believe that based on many of the comments you guys have put on my video called What Happens to Your Vagina If You Don't Have Sex. Take a look at that video. I'll link it here. If you've not seen that video, read the comments. And I think it's actually a very empowering sort of comment section because so many women are writing about their experiences. And in many ways, I think uplifting and lifting each other up. But a common thread I have seen and heard, especially with that video in other parts of my life, is, there are many women who are not sexually active. But statistically, it seems that women are also less likely than men to be in an intimate sexual relationship. Something else I think is interesting. Number two, Americans in general, we have less sex. We have less sex in recent years. We are having less sex than we did in past years. Okay. So, after the year 2000, the rates of sex just for like everybody has like gone down for Americans, which I think is really interesting. Less sex, Some people might say, well, with pornography and blah, 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 they may not expect that. But data suggests that there's less sex happening in general. There are multiple reasons for that. I'm not going to go into that in terms of the studies. So that's why I'm going to put the studies in the description. You can take a look at them and read them. But I think that's an interesting thread to mention. And then the last thing I wanted to mention before we talk about too much sex and what that's about is sexual frequency declines with age. Now, this may not be surprising, but if you wondered if it was true, it is true. So according to one particular study, people in their mid to late 20s have sex about 80 times per year, and that declines to about 30 times per year for people in their mid 60s. Interesting, huh? Again, the sources will be in the description of the video. So a couple things to keep in mind there. But as I mentioned in the beginning, in terms of, this weekly sex thing, look, I kind of think that, we say like age is just a number. I want to sort of say that sex is just a number too. It is, but it isn't, but it is, okay? Unless you're trying to have a baby, sex really should be about pleasure. And how much pleasure you need and the type of pleasure you need and all that stuff, the details really is going to be individual for you. So that takes us to like, can you have too much sex? How much is too much? Well, there is not a number, as you could probably imagine I was going to tell you. There isn't a number for how much sex is too much, but there are clues that might let you know that your sex may need to be curtailed or you need to rethink it. Number one, if you have injuries. Okay, I have a video on injuries that happen during sex. Injuries can happen: back pain, abrasions, muscle strains and sprains, vaginal soreness, etc. And that is for many people a rate limiting step. What does that mean? It's a step or something that when it occurs may keep people from having sex again that day. And they may say, well, let's just hold off till tomorrow. Okay, so that may be a sign that literally you might be having a little bit too much for you because of injury or pain or discomfort or things like that. I would also say, if your sexual habits and activity interferes with your daily life. That means it's interfering with your work or your home life, or you're getting your responsibilities done, or if it's affecting you mentally in a way that is not productive. Any of those things, and it's a sort of a wide swath, right? Because it's going to be different for everybody. That is a problem, and that may be that you are having too much sex or the wrong kind of sex or whatever it might be. Okay.
And I forgot to say this, but probably a third thing is if your doctor tells you not to have sex, or for some reason they think you're having too much sex for some underlying medical reason or whatever, then that's also a sign as well.
And by the way, I've got to put another disclaimer here. When we talk about sex, you might write in the comments, what do you mean by sex? Okay, I know you're going to ask that. And unfortunately, in many of the studies we have, sex is not always specifically defined. And remember, people consider sex to be different things. Some people consider it self-pleasuring. Some people consider it only penetrative intercourse. Some people, it's just different, okay? And sometimes we're not including same-sex couples in the studies that we have. So there's a lot of variables. So just bear with me with that, okay? But the point being is, sex as we know it, yeah, you can have too much if it's interfering with your life. It might be too much if it's causing you pain or things like that. But aside from, I would say those things, I would say it really is it's a matter of what's right for you. Again, I think I've told this story before. I saw an older couple when I was a medical student early on in my medical school career, and they had sex every day. And this couple was maybe in their 60s, and I don't think they'd ever spent a night apart. They had sex every day. It was just part of what they did. And then there are some couples who plan sex and they have sex twice a month. There is no shame with this game. This is not something where you want to sort of keep up with the Joneses. This is something where you want to find out what's right for you and your partner. It's also an opportunity and important to express how you feel so that you can work with your partner to find out what's best for both of you, right? Because this is a joint endeavor. Oh, and you know what? I thought this is really interesting. There was a couple studies talking about some of the things that is problematic for us as we get older with sex. For men, it tends to be erectile dysfunction. I do have some videos about that. For women, it tends to be things like vaginal dryness, decreased libido, and other things. So if this sounds common or familiar to you, just know that you are not alone. Pain, injuries, and interfering with your life, your work, your mental health, things like that. Yeah, you got to rethink things. But aside from that, there may not be an upper limit on how much sex is too much sex. This is a topic that it's good that we're talking about because sex is an important part of life that we should not be ashamed of. So write in the comments, tell me what you think. Tell me what your practices are. I always ask because what you guys write in the comments, actually, it really helps other people, to be honest with you. And I always say the comment section is often where the meat is at because you guys often have really insightful comments. I'm Dr. Jen Caudle. I do daily videos on sex and all sorts of stuff. I'll link some of my videos here. If you don't see them, just DM me. I'm on Facebook. Please like and follow my page on Facebook. On YouTube, thanks for watching me. Please subscribe to my channel. Click the little bell for updates. I'm on TikTok and WhatsApp and all sorts of other channels at Dr. Jen Caudle. Also, guys, you can go to my website. Go to drjencaudle.com. You can sign up for my free daily newsletter and all that good stuff. Anyway, guys, I'm Dr. Jen. It's good to see you.